Yeah, pues pushing that new video. This one is I talk about honey a lot, and I had a few questions, so I thought I would do a few more research and kind of go deeper on it. Which actually I was very glad I did because I've learned some stuff, and so I wanted to share it with you. Again, I'm not no expert whatsoever in honey, and actually I even discovered that there's people that believe honey is, I forgot what was the name of it, but there was like a whole group of, they use honey and all different honey product to cure pretty much every disease and stuff. But usually when I hear cure, I stop reading because usually that's where things are a little bit bad. But anyway, just to let know that honey is, it's very out there. So we mentioned I do have honey, and mostly Manuka honey. And the first thing to know is that not all honey are the same. You got what we call pure honey, and you have basically fake honey, so the honey that comes from manufacturers and stuff. And here's and down there'll be a few links and of different articles that I found describing like the study on honey and stuff, but also the videos on how to make the difference between pure honey and fake honey, and another one too cool one we'll talk a little bit later. And why is it important is that basically fake honey is like pure sugar. So a lot of those things that we mention here, the effects of the honey, and I'll describe a little bit why honey works so good, won't work. Because basically you don't really have honey. It's more like sugar with a taste of honey, I guess. I don't know exactly how they do it, but it would be more like sugar. And sugar can still help your wound, and we'll mention that in an article that it has. But to really have all the use of the honey, what you need is pure honey. But also take that in consideration. There's two types of honey. There's the enzymatic production of hydrogen peroxide, which a lot of time they think that's how honey kill bacteria. But also there's the non-peroxide honey. And so most honey are in the first category, and some Manuka honey seems to, and I couldn't find any others, but some Manuka honey are in the non-peroxide honey. But they still display significant antibacterial effect despite that activity is blocked. And it's because honey works on the antibacterial in different ways. So when we talk about antibacterial, because mostly that's the use of the honey that we'll have, so it's kind of antibiotic for all, if you want, is that it has an effect of around 60 species of bacteria, including anaerobe and anaerobes. So anaerobes means that they're cells that are thriving on oxygen, so they can live on surface and stuff. Anaerobe means that on contact of air they don't do so well, so that's the anaerobe one. Sadly, the anaerobes one are the ones that gets us very sick. So the ones that we get for that is like when you get septicemia and stuff, and they're anaerobes, they're harder to kill because they're deeper in everything, and also they can spread a little bit easier because they have tendency to try to go deep because they don't live well with, they don't survive with oxygen. The gram positive and gram negative and broad spectrum. So this is mainly the honeys that they have studies, and some of them. So this is why Manuka keeps coming back, because that's one of them that they have studied the most. But other natural honey, the source can vary as much as 100-fold the potency of their antibacterial activity. So this is why it's important that the honey that you have at your groceries or something, even if it's a natural honey, it may varies on its antibacterial activities. It's better than any honey. So, for example, if we start, we would have the honey the fake honey, let's call it like that. I mean, it could have some use, especially for wound care, but all the other stuff probably wouldn't work great. Then you would have the natural honey that could or could not work because it's not the one that's been studied. And then you have the other ones, where like the meaty honey, which that one that you're sure about what it is, and it has to be it has been ionized, so the properties of honey is not impacted, and but the honey himself has almost like been a kill of any other bacteria, so you cannot, that's why you can put them in wounds and stuff. So the meaty honey that we have, this is what makes a difference than the honey that you buy on the shelf. And then in that category, Manuka is usually the ones that comes because it has been more studies, and it's pretty much on that the spectrum in vivo, and all it kills the bacteria, because some of them are varies. And again, when we use in medicine, we always try to use something that will give us the same results as much as possible, because if you use something that could work or could not work, then you cannot use it as well. In addition, also it can draw moisture, and its high sugar pH can also prevent microbes. So this is one of the reasons that sugar can still work, but they'll see the link down. There's a cool video, and they explain a little bit more in details. It's about a 10-minute video, but it's worth to watch, especially if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Explain exactly why peroxide versus non-peroxide and why it's so important and stuff. So why does it work so well for this antibacterial? So the first reason is the acidity that it creates. So the glucon, it creates some acidic properties that basically creates an environment that it's not well. So bacteria really likes to live in a certain kind of soup. Disturb any of that stuff and they don't do so well. The osmotic pressure, so osmotic means that it's it pools water in a certain way, and it creates low moisture content. So basically the sugar inside, so it's a little bit like when you eat a lot of sugar or something, you need to drink water. It's because of that. It's because your sugar has pulled all the water and you feel dehydrated. And that's the osmotic pressure, because the sugar is on one side and it's pulling the water out of your vessels, so it makes you dehydrated, and this is why you feel the thirst. It's a little bit the same thing here for the cells, is that the honey goes around the cells of the bacteria and dries the cell of his water, and so basically the cells die of dehydration. And this is another reason too that so far in all the literature they didn't find any resistance to honey, is because the cells themselves. So when we use an antibiotic, it attacks, depending of the gram positive, gram negative. This is why it's so important to know those things when we give the right antibiotic, because some works on certain layers, and usually what it works, depending of the antibiotic, there's different category for different cells for different things, but usually they'll do something to disrupt the layers around the cells and will destroy that. That's how antibiotic mostly works. But what happened is that the antibiotics, the cells, when they become resistant, is that they know now how this one's going to be attacked, and they create a defense against it. But here it's pure chemistry. It's osmotic pressure. Anything, they cannot defend themselves against that. They cannot redesign the way that physics works, basically, because you put something in a certain category and it will create the osmotic effect. So this is why it's so good about different and also that peroxide that it creates in certain categories, and the acidic too, it creates the right and the wrong environment for them to thrive, and so they all died. So this is why it's so effective against a whole gam, and there's no resistance, because it works on different levels. So it works, we were talking about antibacterial activity, so it works against pathogenic bacteria, oral bacteria, and also food spoilage bacteria. So it has a lot of different effects. for all different type of bacteria. And again, because of this very generalized broad approach, it's a little bit better than antibiotics that would have to be very specific to certain things. So why is it so good for wounds? So first of all is the antibacterial activity. So again, you don't need it on everything, but this is one of the reasons we use it for wounds. So the burn wounds, you don't really die of the burn themselves, but it's the complication of it. So infection gets in there because the skin is what protects us. So basically your wall now is broken, and basically an invasion of stuff can come in. You're losing a lot of water. You're creating the exact environment that the bacteria thrive for it. You have all kind of bacteria that goes in and out, and because of the moisture you create that is all around, but it's a bad moisture, because there's too much liquid, because you're seeping a lot of fluids and stuff. It creates an abundance of bacteria. So this is why burns are so. And then we talk in the past of other wound care about that good soup that burns, that any wounds needs. And so it maintain a most wound condition, but not too dry, not too wet, just perfect in the middle. And this high viscosity, helps as well as almost to prevent a little barrier. So it creates a little bit like an upside, like those epithelial barrier that we have. So his high viscosity, things gets harder to go through it and go pass by it. So this is why it's good for wounds. And here again, even more things that it does. So it create the formation of granulation tissue, epitheliation. So basically all it means is that it promotes the healing of the wound, tissue growth, synthesis of collagen, reduce edema, reduce inflammation, also help the odorize your wound, because some wounds can have like this foul smell, so that can help. One that I wanted to mention is that facilitate debridement. So debridement means that you got like a hard tissue of it, and there was one time my brother likes tattoos, and he had this big tattoo on his chest here, and I don't know if he reacted or something, but the day after he had it created this crust on his wounds, and it didn't look too good. So he asked me to look for it, and I put some honey on it, and he said like the whole day after that, overnight, it felt like itching a lot, but the next day or 2 days after, when we took it off, the tissue was now nice. So basically it debrided. So it's called chemically debridement. So basically it takes off all the bad tissue of it. And then after that, his wound healed nicely. I forgot the kind of dressing we put after that, but it needed to debride. So sometime when you have this hard surface on your wounds, it needs to soften that up before you can heal, because even if we put a dressing, that's the wound himself kind of making up a wall. So you need to breach the wall to go to your tissue and try it. So honey sometimes can be used for that, and also it reduces pain. So we're talking about honey, and we were talking initially honey versus the one that you have. So sugar still has and was used, I think, during the Napoleon time for wound treatment. And here there's a little studies, and basically what they did was they put the honey group versus the sugar, and what it shows is that patient had wound culture at the start of treatment and 20% at 1 week. So basically it drops the infection by almost 30%. But if you compare with the sugar group, it's not as high. So it does work, but not as well, and we were mentioning that before. So it'll have this osmotic pressure, but some cells probably don't have, and it promotes wound healing a little bit better. Sugar would have a little bit more too much osmotic pressure, I presume, and it makes good cells as well die, and so it doesn't have. So it still would work. So for example, if you don't have honey and you have sugar, and most people will have a lot of sugar, and maybe they don't have the honey, or even if you have the fake honey, this is what. But be mindful of that it won't work as well as your honey that you're used to work with or something. So if you have something else, sugar would be probably better than anything of for sale, or even the fake honey, so the one that you would find on the grocery or whatever. So they would still have a little bit better effect, but not as well as honey. So the purpose of this was just to bring that to your knowledge there. Other use for it. And so we always mention it about wound care, but it can be used for acid reflux. So some people apparently have shown that it helps decrease. And recently, what I've been using when I get gastroenteritis, or here it says infantile. But that was more to bring me back to, don't forget that raw honey or pure honey has also their kids, depends on what you read, but to be more safe, less than 2 years old. Most people say 1 year old, but under 1 year old, they can have botulism out of honey. So they're not recommended in very young kids to be used because of that risk. So the pure honey may be at risk for botulism, which is like bad thing for to die of. But there's some studies that have shown that, for example, when you do your mix oral liquids, instead of putting sugar, because a lot of time it's salt and sugar, if you put a bit of honey, shown that it kind of decreased, because a lot of the gastroenteritis are obviously infection of the diarrhea that you have is caused because of an infection in the stomach. Well, they've shown that if you replace it with honey, it decreased by 1 or 2 days of the infection that you have, because it kills kill the bacteria. So it can be used for that. We talk about wounds and burns, which is the major, a lot of studies about it and things like that. Treating for allergies. What they mention here, there's some small literature, but it is still there. So if you usually have like allergies from the environment, so pollen and stuff like that, because honey is made out of pollen. So if you buy the honey that is made near your place, but this is when this is why I think a lot of studies are confounded, because you have to buy the honey that is made near you, because if you buy the honey, for example, if you buy honey that was made in New Zealand, the pollen that is in there is not the pollen that you're allergic to. Because you're allergic to the pollen that whatever is around your city. So if you can find a farm or something that makes the honey near where you live, and you buy that honey, then the pollen that is inside the honey is out of your allergy. And so by taking little, I think like 1 tablespoon every day and stuff, basically your body gets used to that allergen, and then you decrease. And in cold relief, it has shown that also for cough, honey is much effective than any cough suppressant, because a lot of time the reason we cough is just there's a little bit of tingling around the back of our throat, and we cough because of that. So honey, because of its viscosity, goes down and robe that and basically creates. So, and also I because of his antibacterial effect, and I forgot to wrote it here, or actually it was there, but it looks like I erased it, was for eye drops. And so if you put sterile water and mix it with a little bit of honey inside, you can create, so if you have an eye infection, on a pinch it would probably work, or even putting honey directly, so it would have an antibacterial effect. And because it's not high pH, and it doesn't change so much the pH of your eye, but you have to dilute it a little bit because of that, because the honey, sometimes different honey, so my understanding is that you have to dilute it a little bit, and then you use it as an eye drops. And to go back on the gastroenteritis, this is now the mix that I use. I use when I feel sick or have like food poisoning or something like that. Lemon, ginger, and a little bit of honey in there, and I make like a boil water, and then I make drink of that. And it has worked wonders for me in the last few times that I had to work with it. So that's one that you can use for the honey and stuff like that. Anyway, that was a quick video about honey and its different use, and to answer a few questions that I received. So hopefully it was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.